This is Carla Atherton, Director of the Healthy Family Formula and host and producer of the Children's Health Summit 4. In response to the rapid rise in conditions such as autism, cancer, ADHD, GI distress, anxiety, depression, asthma, skin conditions, learning disabilities, and autoimmunity, the topic of this year's summit is preventing and reversing childhood chronic illness. And today, I'm very excited to be interviewing this session's speaker, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. Dr. Campbell McBride graduated with honors as a medical doctor in 1984 from Bakshir Medical University in Russia. In the following years, she gained a postgraduate degree in neurology. After practicing for 5 years as a neurologist and 3 years as a neurosurgeon, she started a family and moved to the UK. It was during this time that Dr. Campbell McBride developed her theories on the relationship between neurological disorders and nutrition, and completed a second postgraduate degree in human nutrition at Sheffield University, UK. Dr. Campbell McBride returned to practice in 2000 and runs the Cambridge Nutrition Clinic. She has specialized in using nutritional approach as a treatment and has become recognized as one of the world's leading experts in treating children and adults with learning disabilities and other mental disorders, as well as children and adults with digestive and immune disorders. In 2004, she published a book, which I have I think an original printing copy, I don't know, it looks like it, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, Natural Treatment of Autism, ADHD, Dyslexia, Dyspraxia, Depression, and Schizophrenia, where she explores the connection between the patient's physical state and brain function. The book gives full details of the GAPS nutritional protocol, highly successful in treating patients with learning disabilities and other mental problems. A second edition was published in 2010, and the book has been translated into 16 languages. Dr. Campbell McBride is a keynote speaker at many professional conferences and seminars worldwide. She is also a member of the Society of Authors, the British Society for Environmental Medicine, and a board member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. She is a regular contributing health editor to a number of journals, magazines, newsletters, and radio programs around the world. A hearty and very grateful welcome, Dr. Campbell McBride.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Just so you know, people listening, we may have a little delay. I think that you'll find that with a lot of the interviews because I live in the sticks in Saskatchewan, Canada. So the internet is just like a hair slower. So just patience with that if we talk over each other a little bit. It's not because we're trying to interrupt each other. It's just the way it is out here. So anyway, Dr. Natasha, I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm just going to talk just a little bit more, and then we'll get to hear more about you. But I just have to tell everybody listening, my introduction to your work was when my youngest was, she's always had issues with eczema since she was a babe, and we did some things in some nutritional intervention and some elimination of certain foods that weren't really liking her very, very much. So we learned a little bit about that. But when I read your book, it was like, it was during a time where she was having a lot of trouble, hives, anything, like she would touch grass and she would react, and she had some big reactions when we were up at the lake in a really northern, remote area of Saskatchewan, Canada. So it was getting kind of the point where I was a little bit, I was scared and I was worried about her because these reactions were almost like anaphylactic in nature, like they were very acute. And so I started reading your book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, at the lake at the time that this was all going on. So your work is very near and dear to my heart. We've used a lot of your principles, and I've actually recently dug it up just because there's some things that are going on in my family that we need to revisit. So I appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're here. And so I keep talking about this gut, like the Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And you're known for this. You're known for the GAPS diet. But first, I just want would you tell us your story a little bit about, first your take on the climate of the health of our children at present?
Well, I'm sure majority of you have noticed that children are not getting any healthier in the Western world. Mm-hmm. In fact, all the trends are up. And increasing. When I started practicing as a medical doctor We were diagnosing one child in 10,000 with autism, for example.
Yeah.
Today, in the English-speaking world, we are diagnosing one child in 35. And the scientists have already projected that line further. Between 2020 and 25, we are projected to be diagnosing one child in two with autism in the English-speaking world. The rest of the Western world is not that far behind. They're all catching up with the English-speaking world. So half of our children very soon will be autistic. The other half is not going to be healthy either. They are projected to be hyperactive, dyslexic, dyspraxic, oppositional defiant, schizophrenic, have diabetes type 1, have rheumatoid arthritis, have allergies, asthma, eczema, and all kinds of other illnesses. All of these illnesses are growing in statistics, and they're becoming younger. Younger and younger children are falling prey to all of that. So there is an unmistakable epidemic going on. When you go to a playground in a primary school nowadays in the Western world, particularly in the English-speaking countries, it is very hard to actually find many healthy children. Majority of children have some kind of physical problems. Now there's some kind of illnesses. They're on medication of some sort. They can't behave themselves. Their social skills are not very good. They have skin problems. They have allergies. They have something going on. And the whole situation is getting deeper. Why is this happening? Many people are asking this question. What exactly is happening? I would like to talk about this. GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome, and gut and physiology syndrome, both in the English language abbreviate to the same GAPS.
Right.
It's a concept that I have developed, that I have established, and it has taken over the world. There are millions of people around the world who are following the GAPS nutritional protocol with good results. What it is basically, we have a person with abnormal gut flora. Western science got interested in the gut flora, in that community of microbes which live inside the digestive system of the person, only in the last few years. But the research is booming in that area. And what they've discovered that about 90% of all cells in the human body are in our gut flora, 90%. So we human beings, our bodies are only 10%. It's only a shell, a habitat for this mass of microbes that live inside us. And we ignore them at our peril. In a healthy person, it is an extremely complex and diverse community. There are fungi there are protozoa, there are bacteria, viruses, archaea, flukes, worms, all kinds of creatures. And they're all essential, they're all important, and they live in a mixed, diverse community, and they all plant each other and harvest each other and eat each other and control each other. They don't allow any one of them to get out of control and start causing trouble. Problem is, we human beings, with our modern lifestyles and our modern sciences and technologies, are very good at creating imbalances in nature. Not only inside our bodies, but outside our bodies too. Wherever we touch, whatever we touch, we create imbalances. We've been damaging this planet. We've been damaging the whole life cycle on this planet, the microbes, the animals, the birds, all the life, the soil microbial community. And at the same time, we were doing the same thing to the microbial community, to that world inside us, which is just as rich, diverse, and amazing as life on Earth itself. Every time you take a course of antibiotics, you're killing off a lot of bacteria, because antibiotics only kill bacteria. These bacteria have been eating and controlling fungi, viruses, protozoa, archaea, flukes, worms, all kinds of different creatures. So when these bacteria have gone, after a good course of antibiotic, all these other creatures suddenly find themselves out of balance and uncontrolled. And microbes multiply very, very quickly. They can produce trillions of babies in a matter of hours. So they suddenly start multiplying and growing and occupying new niches inside your digestive system. Your beneficial bacteria do recover, many of them do recover, have that ability, but it takes them between 2 weeks to 2 months to recover. And that's a large window of opportunity for all these other microbes to suddenly overgrow and occupy large parts of the digestive system. So from one course of antibiotic to the next course of antibiotic, and to the next course of antibiotic, there is less and less of harmony, balance, and diversity in your microbial community, in the 90% of you, by the way. And there is more and more of imbalance and overgrowth of various microbes. When they overgrow, they become pathogenic.
Mm-hmm.
They cause problems, they cause trouble in the body. The problem is that we're now exposed to antibiotics not only when we go to the doctor and get a prescription. We're exposed to antibiotics now every time we put anything in our mouths.
Yeah.
Because our industrial agriculture, which produces all the food that is sold in our supermarkets, uses a plethora of chemicals, most of which in their nature are antibiotics. Pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and other sides are antibiotics in their nature.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you eat bread, pasta, vegetables, fruit, meat, eggs, fish, milk, anything, they're laced with antibiotics. As long as you bought it in a supermarket, as long as it is produced by industrial agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Many people believe in the organic label. I'm afraid we can't believe it anymore because in the last 10 years, the industrial agriculture wanted a large piece of that pie and they have corrupted organic standards. You cannot trust organic label anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of cheating, a lot of lies in that area, and just downright even regulations and legally produced organic stuff nowadays, you simply cannot trust. It is not organic anymore. So there is no other easy option, I'm afraid, for people. So people still buy organic in the supermarkets. We have to find other options. And they are there, these options. So coming back to the gut flora, vast majority of people in the Western world have got a damaged gut flora because of the food we eat, because of the medications we take, and also because of a natural fact that Mother Nature has created, that mother and father, parents, pass their gut flora to their baby at the moment of birth.
Mm-hmm.
So gut flora is passed through generations. People usually, whenever the parents are mentioned, they think only about genetics.
Mm-hmm.
There is much, much more than the parents pass to the child apart from genetics.
Yes.
They pass their gut flora. And since we invented antibiotics during the Second World War, they came onto the market in the Western world sometime at the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s. And they started damaging the digestive gut flora in people starting from that time. Before I talk about the health of a child in my clinic, I always talk about the health of the parents,
Mm-hmm.
other siblings in the family, and grandparents. And a typical scenario has emerged. If grandparents in the 50s and the 60s had a few courses of antibiotics maybe, which damaged their gut flora slightly, because that generation of people, when they were born, their parents passed to them normal, healthy, balanced gut flora.
Mm-hmm.
Because antibiotics didn't exist on the planet. Before the Second World War, the whole planet was organic. Just think about that.
Yep.
There was no industrial agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
There were no chemicals. There was no chemical industry to speak of. There was no pharmaceutical industry, no vaccinations, no antibiotics. People ate organically. And the traditional agricultural practices were still followed. So the quality of the food was incomparable to what we eat today, what industrial agriculture is giving us today. So those people, those grandparent generation, they have acquired healthy, balanced, wonderful gut flora from their parents. And then they had a few courses of antibiotics, maybe one or two, before they had their children. So they passed their slightly damaged gut flora to their children. Mm-hmm. Then their children grew up in a very different world. They grew up in a world where throughout their childhood, antibiotics were prescribed to them for every cough and sneeze, because as soon as antibiotics came onto the market, those generations of young people were given antibiotics for sore throats, for colds, for runny nose, for hives, for anything at all. Every course of antibiotic damages the composition of the gut flora in the child. At the same time, industrial agriculture appeared on the planet. These children were growing on industrially produced food, which are laced with industrial chemicals. Junk food came on the market, which replaced proper meals for many of these children. Mm-hmm. Junk food feeds pathogenic microbes exclusively in the digestive tract. Then in this generation of kids, girls were put on a contraceptive pill when they were 15, 16, which they took for quite a few years before they were ready to start their family. And contraceptive pill has a devastating effect on the composition of the gut flora of the woman. Mm-hmm. So by the time that generation of young people decided to have their first baby, their gut flora is seriously damaged. And that is what they're passing to their children.
Yes.
This situation is getting deeper and deeper with every generation. Even a few years ago, the babies that I saw in my clinic had stronger constitution and better gut flora from their parents than babies that we see today. Mm. every year, this is a real avalanche coming upon humanity. The gaps, abnormal gut flora and all the illnesses that it causes is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And it is this epidemic that is a true cause underneath our epidemics of autism, hyperactivity in children, attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, dyspraxia, asthma, diabetes type 1, eczema, epilepsy, and all kinds of other physical and mental illnesses that our children are suffering from now, and adults as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in a GAPS child? These children acquire abnormal gut flora from the parents right from the beginning of their lives. And children are born with an immature immune system. It's an immune system which needs education. Establishment of normal gut flora in the first few days of life is a crucial part of maturation of that immune system, of introduction of the baby's immune system to this world. Because these children acquire abnormal gut flora from mommy and daddy right from day one, their immune system is inappropriately educated. These children are left immune compromised with abnormal gut flora and compromised immune system. Vaccinations are a huge attack on the immune system. They're designed for children with healthy, robust immune systems. A growing proportion, from my point of view, vast majority of babies born today have compromised immunity. They are not fit to be vaccinated. They are easily damaged by vaccination. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is coinciding with the pressure from the Western governments to actually vaccinate everyone, to vaccinate everybody. So that is a big problem. Another problem is that it sounds cruel, sounds unfair, mm-hmm. but the way Mother Nature designed the woman's body is that during pregnancy, it treats pregnancy as a chance to clean up by dumping toxins into the fetus. Mm-hmm. We have a problem in the world because our girls from a very young age now are using personal care products. They dye their hair, they go to hairdressers, they do nails, they do makeup, they do all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Our skin is not a barrier, it is a sponge. It absorbs everything you put on it in seconds. Mm-hmm. Our chemical industry has invented some 100,000 new chemicals which don't exist in nature. Your body is part of nature. It doesn't know what to do with these chemicals because they don't exist in nature. Mm-hmm. So when these chemicals are absorbed through the skin, all the body can do is just store them, put them away somewhere, tuck them away, imprison them in your fat tissue usually, to make sure that they don't cause much trouble. Yeah. When the woman and our girls grow up in a world where they're using lots and lots of chemicals, and chemicals are coming from industrially produced food, and from prescription medications, and from other sources, from cleaning chemicals and washing chemicals and dishwasher chemicals and all kinds of chemicals around the world, in our modern world. So by the time this young girl grows up and she decides to have her first baby, her body is full of chemicals, full of man-made toxic chemicals. And when she gets pregnant, her body thinks, great, I'll clean up. And it dumps the whole lot into the baby. If that amount of toxicity is enough to kill the baby, then the woman will have a miscarriage. We have an epidemic of miscarriages. Many young ladies nowadays have 1, 2, 3 miscarriages before they're able to produce a viable body for her baby. And stillbirths are also growing. If the woman doesn't have enough toxicity to kill the fetus, to have a miscarriage, then she will give birth to a child with a high toxic load. Our children are increasingly being born with that high toxic load. And that means that child will have compromised constitution. The child acquired abnormal gut flora and a high toxic load from mommy. If the child acquired a lot of mercury and lead and arsenic and aluminium and other toxic metals from the mother during pregnancy, and also the girls nowadays are having their first baby later and later in life. Majority of young ladies nowadays wouldn't even think of having their first baby until they're 30, over 30, but sometimes 35, sometimes even later in life. The longer she leaves it, the more toxicity she accumulates in her body and the harder the hit on her first baby. If these toxic metals, this mercury, aluminium, arsenic, and lead, and other toxic metals have accumulated in the baby, these things are fat soluble. They target high fat tissues. That's what they accumulate in the child's body. The brain is a high fat tissue. The rest of the nervous system is a high fat tissue. Pancreas is a high fat tissue. thyroid, the rest of endocrine glands, and our bone marrow is a high fat tissue. That's where all our blood and immune cells are born, in the bone marrow. We have an epidemic of leukemia. It is the #1 most common cancer amongst children. These children, I have no doubt, were born with a high load of toxic metals right there in their bone marrow. That is why they develop leukemia in the first few years of life, these children. Their bone marrow is poisoned. It's intoxicated. And we have an epidemic of autism. These children have lots of mercury in their brain, and aluminium, and lead, and other things, which came from mommy during pregnancy. The father also shares it through semen, which absorbs in the mother's vagina, because semen is a major venue for the man to clean his body up. He dumps into the semen a lot of man-made chemicals that are absorbed into his body. So our children are increasingly damaged by our world, through the mother, through the father, through the damage to the gut flora. So what happens to this child then? When the child acquires this abnormal gut flora, the child is also immune compromised. And because the child is immune compromised, the child develops infections. Ear infections is a particularly common infection in the first year of life. Many babies go through 15 ear infections, 10, 9, 15. And antibiotics are prescribed, of course, for these ear infections, or chest infections, or other infections. And whatever precious good bacteria this child did get from the mother at the moment of birth get wiped out by consecutive courses of antibiotics. So the situation gets even worse. While the child is exclusively breastfed, the child is receiving protection, because milk of any animal, including human milk, is the white blood of the female, with red blood cells removed and some other things removed. It is an immune active organ. It's full of active immune cells, antibodies, microbes, active enzymes, active neurotransmitters, hormones, all kinds of wonderful things in there. Because this mommy had her abnormal gut flora for a long time and her toxicity for a long time in her body, her immune system developed some protection against her gut flora and against all this toxicity. And while the baby is being exclusively breastfed, the baby is receiving that protection. But when the breastfeeding stops, that protection stops as well. And we can almost time the end of the breastfeeding, which usually ends around the age of 1 for majority of children in the world. We can time the beginning of autism to that period of time. When the breastfeeding stops, that's when the child starts sliding into autism, or becomes hyperactive, or develops some other mental issues, or physical issues, or develops diabetes type 1, or something else happens to the child. I have seen families now where children would have been very damaged and possibly diagnosed with autism or something else if the mother didn't continue breastfeeding. Some mothers now opt to breastfeed for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Even a little bit every day, or a little bit in a few days, a top up for a child like that provides that protection. And it can make the difference between the child being autistic or just being slightly cranky and difficult and fussy with food maybe. Or some other issues which you can live with. But autism is a serious situation. So what happens in autism, which we have an epidemic of, and it is getting deeper and deeper? From my point of view and the point of view of other holistic doctors in the world, vast majority, almost 100% of autistic children in the world are born with a perfectly normal brain. These were perfectly normal children, perfectly normal babies. But they acquired abnormal gut flora from mommy and daddy from day 1 of their lives. And they acquired a high toxic load from mommy during pregnancy. And as a result, their digestive system gets damaged. That abnormal mixture of microbes, pathogenic mixture of microbes, damage the integrity of the gut wall of the baby and start digesting food in their own way, converting it into thousands of very toxic, poisonous chemicals. These toxic poisonous chemicals absorb through the damaged gut wall of the baby and get into the brain of the child. They clog the brain with toxicity. How do babies learn? Normal babies, how do they learn? They use their sensory organs. They listen to everything, they look at everybody, they touch everything, they smell everything, they taste everything, they take everything in their mouth. What are they doing? They're using their sensory organs to collect information from the environment. And then these sensory organs pass that information to the brain to be processed. And the brain then learns that this is mommy, this is daddy, I can trust them. This is a toy, I play with it like that. These are other children, I copy them. This is food, I eat it. And that's how a child becomes a normal human being in this world. It learns how to be a human being, how to live in a human society. But if the child's brain is clogged with toxicity, it cannot process this information appropriately. All this information coming from sensory organs, from ears, eyes, tactile sensitivity, smell, taste, and other sensory organs, turns into a noise, into a mush in the child's brain. And from that noise, the child cannot decipher anything useful. The child doesn't learn that this is mommy and daddy. Autistic children don't know their mommy and daddy very often. In fact, mommy and daddy don't mean any more than any other human being around. Autistic children are known to pick up a hand of any stranger on the street and try to walk away with that person. With mommy running behind and screaming his name.
Yes.
Because mommy doesn't mean any more than anybody else. They don't know what to do with other children. They don't know what to do with food, with toys. Instead, the brain develops screen-saving procedures to survive. Just like your computer has a screen-saving procedure, which shows itself in a senseless, repetitive behaviors, vocalizations, movements that autistic children engage in all day long. They can run in circles, humming something all day long. Or they can sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up for a day, for the whole day. Or they can line up toys, or throw toys, or do some other things. These are just repetitive screen-saving procedures, which is called self-stimulation, stimulus. If the mixture of toxicity coming out of the digestive system of the child is different, maybe not so heavy, then the child may not develop autism, but will develop hyperactivity, or dyslexia, or dyspraxia, or some other complex of symptoms that our mainstream medicine can give a label to. But the problem is, majority of these children, every child is unique. Every human being is unique, and every human being has a unique gut flora composition. And that gut flora will produce a unique mixture of toxins hitting the brain of the child. That is why more than 80% of these children do not fit into any diagnostic box. They have a little bit of autism, a bit of ADHD, a bit of dyslexia, a bit of this and that and the other, and none of it fits neatly into any diagnostic box. And with these children, pediatricians usually take a few years before they give a diagnostic label to the child. What I tell the parents, don't waste time, don't wait for the diagnosis. Because the diagnosis is not going to help your child in any possible way. It's not helpful at all. You know something's wrong with your child. Start the GAPS nutritional protocol. The younger the child is, when we heal and seal the gut wall, and that's what the GAPS diet will do for your child. It will close up all those holes in the gut wall, heal and seal it. It'll change the gut flow, it will normalize it, rebalance it, create some harmony, create some diversity in the gut flora. And that river of toxicity that was flowing from the gut to the brain of the child will stop. Once the gut heals and seals itself, that river of toxicity will stop. But once it stops, the brain will not take a few weeks to clean itself, because human brain has a marvelous capacity to clean itself. It cleans itself all the time, detoxifies itself all the time. But once it's removed this toxic fog out, that baby will come out of the fog. It will wake up and start developing normally, start learning, start copying children around, copying adults around, responding. The younger the child is when that moment happens, the quicker the child recovers and the more fully the child recovers. Because other 2, 3, 4-year-old children are not standing still. Typically developing children develop very rapidly. They learn so much every day. So our poor little autistic individual or hyperactive or child with another problem, with this GAPS problem, when they come out of that fog, they have to catch up with other 3, 4, 5-year-olds. So the less they've missed out, the less development and time they have missed out while they were stuck in that fog, the quicker they will catch up, the easier it will be to catch up for them. The older they are, the more difficult it is. Children usually over the age of 3, autistic children, need to be taught intensively, especially taught to allow them to catch up with other 3-year-olds. Because those 3-year-olds have run ahead quite a long distance already. They've learned an awful lot. While this poor autistic 3-year-old was stuck in that toxic fog. If a child is 16 months old, up to the age of 2, quite often I find that just the GAPS nutritional protocol is enough. You won't even need to teach your child anything special. The child will wake up and learn everything himself and catch up himself or herself.
Yeah.
After other children. When the brain accumulates too much toxicity in a large proportion of these children, it develops a surviving procedure, a safety valve. It perceives that this amount of toxins is damaging its physical structure. So in these children, it would send one electric discharge through and clean the whole lot of toxins out in one go. And that manifests itself as an epileptic seizure.
Oh.
Epilepsy is a cleansing procedure for the brain. It's a safety valve for the brain, an epileptic seizure. The last thing these children need is another toxin in the form of anti-epileptic medication, because a major side effect of every anti-epileptic medication is seizures. They actually cause seizures. There is a small proportion of children with epilepsy who have a dangerous form of epilepsy when they're having 5 gram miles a day or even more gram miles a day. And that obviously is very dangerous. That can kill the child. So that needs to be suppressed. That activity needs to be suppressed. But majority of children are not in that category. They had one seizure and then they have no seizures for months afterwards. And they still put on medication. My dream is that one day our mainstream medicine will be putting them on the GAPS diet. Because I've lost count now how many children around the world have recovered from epilepsy fully when they go on the GAPS diet. Because we stop that river of toxicity coming out of the gut into the brain cleans itself up, and once it's clean, it doesn't need this safety valve anymore. There is no need for this procedure for the epilepsy anymore. And I have many, many adults in the world, epileptic adults who have been epileptic for many years, who recover too. Their epilepsy becomes much less frequent, much, much milder. They can live with it, and they can come off medication or reduce it dramatically. So it is worth doing it at any age. When these GAPS children grow up, they become GAPS adults unless they have been treated. And if they've been mild, fairly mild, maybe they were not diagnosed with anything specific, but they just were clumsy, not very good academically, it was difficult to make friends, can't play sports very well, fussy with food, maybe got glasses, got asthma, got a few allergies, just fussy with food. So, but none of it is severe enough to receive any diagnosis or anything else. The child sort of survived through childhood, managed to pull through the childhood. When they come to teenage years, this population of children are very prone to become drug addicts, to drug abuse, because there are chemicals that the brain uses which are called neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins, and there's about 200 of various neurotransmitters. They're essential chemicals. And the more we're learning about them, the more we're realizing that actually they're manufactured in the gut and then transported to the brain to be used. Almost 100% of serotonin is manufactured in the gut with the activity of our gut flora. And it is our happy neurotransmitter. That's what makes us happy and positive and makes us want to live in this world and do things in this world. Dopamine is our motivational neurotransmitter. That's what makes us jump out of bed and go and conquer the world. But if the child went through the childhood with a digestive disorder, with GAPS, which is a digestive disorder, they were not producing enough neurotransmitters. These children actually go through their childhood with a form of depression, a form of anxiety, with other problems, because the brain's not receiving enough of these vital chemicals. Morphine, heroin, smoking cannabis, abusing, other illicit things, reckless, dangerous behaviors, dangerous smoking, abusing alcohol, abusing tobacco, and other addictive behaviors can produce a boost of these neurotransmitters for a few minutes in the brain. And I believe that we are born to be happy. How do we feel happiness? How do we feel to be on top of the world? By our brain receiving a fountain of neurotransmitters, a large amount of neurotransmitters. And these drugs can produce that fountain for a few minutes. And that is possibly the first time this teenager has experienced the joy of life. That's the first time they might have realized that's what life is about. And of course, they want it again. That's when psychological dependency comes in. And then as they start using these things regularly, physical dependency comes in too. So addictions, all kinds of addictions are GAPS disorders, all of them. Alcoholics are GAPsters.
Yeah.
People who smoke too much are gapsters. People who are addicted to drugs and addicted to reckless, dangerous behaviors, to unsafe sex or to something else, they're
Food.
gapsters. So in order for them to recover, Alcoholic Anonymous needs to know about gaps.
Yes.
Because if they put their members on gaps, they will be recovering far quicker, much quicker than they are recovering just with counseling that they
Well, they're not
receive.
really recovering just
with
with
all the
counseling, because that whole physical aspect isn't taken into account. So we need to, that's actually essential. That the reason why
it is
they're
essential.
in the first place needs to be addressed, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And then in the adulthood,
Sorry, I don't want to
adulthood, from my view, all psychiatric disorders, all these hundreds and hundreds of diagnostic labels that our mainstream psychiatry has created so far, all of them are gaps.
Yes.
Depression, bipolar disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, compulsive depressive or whatever else, schizophrenia, of course. They're all gaps, all psychiatric disorders. But the more I worked with GAPS people in my clinic, the more I realized that they're physically very ill too. Because that river of toxicity coming out of the digestive tract doesn't just go to the brain, it gets distributed all over the body. It goes into your heart, into your lungs, into your skin, into your bones, into your muscles, everywhere else, into your liver, everywhere else. And wherever these toxins get to, they cause illnesses. All autoimmunity is born in the gut. Every autoimmune disease. This best part of 200 disorders have been classified as autoimmune to date, and the list is growing all the time, because about 85% of your immune system is located in the gut wall. About 85%. So your digestive system is the biggest and the most important immune organ in your body. And it's logical, isn't it? Because 90% of you is sitting in the gut. That's your gut flora. And the relationship between your gut flora and that 85% of immunity sitting in the gut wall is very tight. They are partners. They're talking to each other all the time. The gut flora is informing the immune system about what's going on. It's a major source of data for it, and it feeds it, and it balances it. Lots and lots of things happen. So when the gut flora is abnormal, the immune system is abnormal too. It launches generalized inflammation in the body, autoimmunity, allergies, reactions, all these hives and hay fever and asthma and eczema and various skin rashes and all kinds of reactions. All of this is due to abnormal gut flora and damaged gut wall. And when the gut wall is damaged as well, another thing, terrible thing happens. And I'm afraid more than 60% of the Western population, maybe even more than 70%, 80%, suffer from this problem today. And that is called leaky gut. These pathogenic microbes that overgrow in the gut of the person damage the integrity of the gut wall. They make it porous and leaky. Holes develop in the gut wall, literally. So food doesn't get the chance to be digested properly before it absorbs. A lot of food absorbs undigested, partially digested. And then the immune system, of course, finds these bits of food in the blood and lymph, looks at them and says, food. I don't recognize you as food, and attacks them. It attaches its own cells and complexes to it, and that then forms very large molecules. And wherever these large molecules get to, the bits of food with all the immune system activity around it, they cause disease, they cause problems in the body. And that can cause, this is called food allergy and intolerance. It can cause any reaction in the world, from a panic attack to a drop in the blood sugar level, drop in energy, to heart palpitations, to an asthma attack, to eczema, to asthma, to cystitis, to psoriasis, to anything in the body at all. And the reaction can be immediate or it can be delayed. So on any given day, you have no idea what you're reacting to. You might be reacting to a piece of meat you've just eaten, plus tomatoes you've eaten 2 hours ago, plus a banana you ate yesterday, plus something else you've eaten 2 weeks ago. All of these reactions overlap on top of each other. People go and test for food allergies and intolerances in laboratories, and they get results, 4 pluses for this food and 3 pluses for that food and so on. And they start removing foods out of the diet. And I've seen no end of people who just remove and remove and remove. And they finish up with virtually nothing left to eat. And they're still reacting.
Yeah.
Because as long as your gut wall is like a sieve, you are reacting to everything you eat. So what we do in the GAPS nutritional protocol, we don't waste money on this testing at the beginning. We might do it later if we've got some niggling problems that we're not quite getting through. But at the beginning, we presume that all food is absorbed undigested, and we're reacting to everything.
Yes.
So what we do with the GAPS nutritional protocol, we don't waste money on testing. We invest our funds into good food and good equipment in our kitchen, and we start cooking. And once the gut wall is healed and sealed, once we close up all those holes in the gut lining, food starts digesting properly before it absorbs. And food allergies and intolerances disappear one by one. It may take a year for a person who is particularly damaged, but it will happen. And GAPS introduction diet in particular is designed to deal with that situation.
Okay. Can you give us some more details about the diet itself? Like, what does that entail? What are people eating? What feeding their children? Just kind of give us the rundown of how, the intro GAPS and then the full GAPS diet, what that means.
GAPS diet is based on ancient traditions that our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers used in their kitchen.
Yeah.
We cook traditional foods. Everything's cooked at home from fresh, natural ingredients, and we get the best ingredients we can get. Do not buy your food in supermarkets. You're buying commercially produced rubbish, which is full of chemicals, and organic labels cannot be trusted. What I recommend to people to do, go to your local farmers market, which usually happen in many places on the weekends. Make contact with the farmers who are selling their own produce there, have a talk to them, and say, can I visit your farm? Drive around. Take a few weekends to drive around. Visit the farms. See how the animals are fed. See how they're kept. Are they on pasture? Are they in fresh air? What are they fed? Are they happy animals? And then start buying your food directly from the farms. What my patients do when they live in a city, they create groups where they create a rota.
Yeah.
1 week, somebody drives and gets the food from all these farms for everybody, brings it to their house, and then people come to their house and pick it up. Next week, it's somebody else's turn to do that. So that way, you're not spending every weekend driving long distances to get your food. You might have to do that once in 6 months or once in a few months. So these things can be organized. But that way, you will be getting good quality food for yourselves, and you will be supporting a good farmer. Because the fact is, despite of what our industrial agriculture is trying to tell us, they will tell you that they are feeding the world. Not true. 75% of humanity on our planet are not fed by industrial agriculture. They're fed by small, organic, mixed farms.
Wow.
Because majority of humanity doesn't live in the Western world. They live in Africa, India, China, and Asia and other places, where they're poor and they live on subsistence farming. They have a goat in their back garden. They've got chickens running around. They've got their own gardens. They've got their neighbors, they buy in the local community. So the quality of food that these people consume is incomparable to what we in the Western world buy in our supermarkets. Incomparable. That is why these people produce lots of healthy children and do not have our epidemics yet.
Yes.
Because they're poor and because they have no supermarkets around them and no industrial agriculture.
Yeah.
So we have to replicate that. But even in the Western countries, there are hundreds and hundreds of organic mixed farms run by honest, decent, good people who love their animals, love their chickens, love their gardens, love their land, treat it with love, treat it with respect, use manure, use compost, use natural methods, because all the know-how is there. It is possible to produce huge amounts of food on organic farms, truly organic farms. But you have to visit the farm, you need to learn what is real food, and you need to start buying it from the real organic farms. So that's what we do. That is the #1 prerogative, to get proper quality food, what Mother Nature intended for us to have as food, not what our big agrochemical complex and the government that is in their service want us to eat, and the supermarkets that want us to eat. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we eat nutrient-dense foods, foods which are the easiest to digest and absorb for the human digestive system, and which are prepared properly to make them digestible and nourishing and high density foods. And these are largely animal foods. What I'm talking about may sound very controversial. We don't have time to go in depth into this, but it is animal foods which truly feed, nourish the human body, build our physical structure, build our immune system, and are the easiest for the human digestive system to handle, to digest, and to absorb. So we want fresh and frozen meat, high fat, good quality from happy animals who were on pasture, not in a cafe, not in a confined factory operation, not in cages, not fed chemicals and genetically modified soya and other commercial feeds. No, no, no. We want real meat. We want real fish, wild fish. We want real eggs. We want real milk. And we want real naturally produced vegetables, fruit, nuts, and oily seeds. So the bulk of the diet is based on animal foods. We make a lot of meat stock with bones and joints, ligaments, because the meat stock, when you boil in water, bones and joints and ligaments with a piece of meat on it for several hours, the liquid that results from that is full of the very molecules, very substances which rebuild your gut wall. Mother Nature gave us a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, wonderful mechanism called cell regeneration. All cells that your body is made from live a short life. They get old, they get worn out, they die, the body disposes of them. And to replace them, the body gives birth to trillions of little baby cells every day. This process is particularly active in your gut lining. Your body doesn't waste time on healing a sick cell. If a cell got sick, the body just kills it and removes it and gives birth to a new baby to replace it. So what we're doing with the GAPS diet, we are building new gut lining for you. We're not healing your damaged and sick gut lining. We're building a new one. We're replacing it. Basically, we're removing the old one, we're replacing it. In order for your body to give birth to trillions of new cells to build a new gut lining for you, building materials are required. What building materials? Human body, about 70% of it is water. When you remove water, the dry weight of the human body is about 50-50, protein and fat. That's what we're made of. When we analyze that protein in a laboratory, we find that in its biochemical structure, it's very similar to protein in meat, fish, eggs, and milk. So when we eat these foods properly prepared, fermented, boiled, cooked properly, all the recipes are in my book, and there are now about 10 other books with GAPS recipes published by moms. Mothers are my heroes. By moms who heal their children. Yes, with wonderful, delicious recipes, fantastic recipes. You'll find them all in the resources on my website, gaps.me. And what we're doing, and when you look at the fat in the human body, in its biochemical composition, again, it's very similar to the fats in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. So these are the foods we focus on. So when we make the meat stock will have all the protein necessary, all the building materials necessary, and the fat necessary to give birth to trillions of new little cells that build your gut wall, or the gut wall of your child. We're building a new gut wall. So the more of this meat stock your child drinks on a daily basis, the quicker they will recover, the quicker we will heal and seal the gut wall and stop that river of toxicity coming through it, of undigested foods and toxins and chemicals and alive microbes and all kinds of other things which cause the illness in your child. So the staple in the GAPS diet is the meat stock, made this way. The recipes are all in my book. Another staple, we eat the meats, and we want gelatinous meats. We don't want pure muscle of the animal, because when you say the word meat in the Western world, people see steak, right? They think that's meat.
Chicken breast.
No. The kind of meats we want in the GAPS diet, yes, the kind of meats we want in the GAPS diet, not the muscle of the animal. We want the skin, the feet, the head. We want the ligaments, the fascias, gelatinous, because your gut lining is largely made out of collagen. And that's where collagen molecules come from those parts of the animal. We want the bone marrow, and we want the organs of the animal. Because liver, for example, of the animal has almost 100 times more vitamins, amino acids, and other nutrients to heal your brain, to heal your gut lining, to heal your liver, to heal all kinds of organs in your body. So we want liver, we want kidneys, we want stomach, tripe, we want lungs, we want heart, we want tongue, we want all these inner organs, we want the skin of the animal, and we want all the bits, which are actually much cheaper to buy.
Yes.
So when you find that farm and you find those happy animals which are in the sunlight, on the pasture, you've talked to them, you've seen them, these animals, you know they're happy, you know they're fed properly, you know they have a nice happy life, these animals. Buy the whole animal from the farmer. The farmer will cut it for you, put it into plastic. You want all the bones, you want the feet, you want the skin, you want nothing thrown away. Buy a second-hand freezer, put it in the garage, a chest freezer, and put all that meat in there. So your meat is done. You don't have to think every day, oh God, what am I cooking for dinner?
Yes.
You go to your garage.
Yeah.
And you get a piece out of that freezer and it'll defrost during the day, and you can cook it in the evening, or you can put it frozen into your slow cooker. With a few vegetables, salt, pepper, a cup of water in there, and off you go to work. By the time you come home, your dinner's ready.
So
You
what
have a
about
beautiful
vegetables?
piece of meat, beautiful meat stock in it.
Yes.
Sorry?
And what about vegetables? Like, I know this is the basic, like this is like the foundation of the diet. This is like the major gut healing, component is the broth and the well, not broth. So what do you call it? Stock or broth? I know there's a couple different things you can
Meat stock. Please don't get confused with bone broth. Bone broth is a completely different thing, and I do not recommend it on the GAPS nutritional protocol.
Okay, explain
There are
the
many companies who sell bone broth.
Yes.
Yeah, no, not bone broth. We want meat stock. And the recipes are in my book, How to Make Meat Stock.
Okay.
The meat stock, preparing meat stock will provide you not only with the stock, but will provide you with the meat that you can serve for dinner.
Yeah.
The meat will be delicious. It will be wonderful. It will be falling off the bone. And you bang the bone marrow out as well. So when you buy your meat, ask the butcher to cut the bone in half for you. Or have a butcher's saw at home, or any other saw, so you can cut that bone in half before you're cooking it. It's easy. It's not difficult to cut the bone in half if you have a saw in your garage. Yeah. So once you've cooked it, bang the bone on the wooden chopping board. The bone marrow will fall out, and you return it into the soup, or return it into the stock, or just eat it with a bit of salt and garlic. It's absolutely delicious. Vegetables are wonderful. We do not allow starch on the GAPS diet. Nothing starchy is allowed, because starch is a perfect food for pathogenic microbes. It's a perfect food for any microbe, the good and the bad. You will see a lot of publicity in nutritional literature that starch is good for us, it feeds our gut flora. The problem is starch and fiber feed equally the bad and the good microbes. If your gut flora is healthy, dominated by beneficial microbes, they'll feed on starch, they'll become strong and healthy and make you stronger and healthy as a result. But if you're a GAPster, if you've got GAPS, your gut is dominated by pathogenic microbes. So they will feast on the starch, on the fiber, they will get stronger and bigger and make you very sick as a result. So GAPS diet does not allow any starch. So no potatoes, no yams, no sweet potatoes, no Jerusalem artichokes, parsnips, and any other starchy vegetables. And that means no grains of any description, because all grains contain starch. Whether they're gluten-free or not gluten-free doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. Starch, that's what we do not allow. And indeed, because we do not allow any grains at all in the GAPS diet, it is a truly gluten-free diet. Gluten is only one protein in plants that have been researched so much. There are many, many other proteins in plants, and the more we're researching them, the more we're realizing that none of them are digestible. Human digestive system simply cannot digest plant proteins from soya, from grains, from beans, lentils, and peas, and all sorts of other plants. It simply cannot digest them. And the more we're researching gluten, we're realizing that nobody can digest it, and it's actually damaging everybody. Even if a person is not developing overt symptoms from eating a piece of bread or pasta or anything else like that, but they would not connect their migraines with it, and they would not connect their arthritis with it.
Fatigue.
Or their athlete's food, or
lack of balance.
Their mood. That's right, their mood, or their depression, or something else with it. And only when they remove the grains, they realize, my migraines have disappeared.
Yes.
It was that bread after all.
Yeah.
Even your homemade bread or even your sourdough bread or whatever.
Yeah.
It was after all that. And it was your pasta. And it was all of these things.
Yeah.
These are big decisions for people.
Yes.
And usually it is families which have drastic situations such as autistic children, children with diabetes type 1, children with schizophrenia, children with other serious problems that are prepared to make that jump. People with milder conditions kind of don't want to even believe it because they don't want to change their eating habits.
Well, and
but when it becomes really hard, when it,
it can be hard. And
when it becomes hard, then you have to.
Yes, exactly, because it's harder not to. But so, like, let's talk about that for a minute. How, you know, parents listening might be just like, what? You know, how am I supposed to do this? And it's a huge change, and it actually is not easy to do with the modern lifestyle. Or it really takes a change in a lot of different areas. It's not just what you're buying, but where you're buying it and how you shop and how long it takes you to shop and cooking and how long, you know, if you even cook at all, or when the kids have to go to school and do take lunch and like so many things. And so, I mean, which I think is worth it. I mean, I'm, you know, with you, you know, the mamas are the warriors and we're the, you know, it's worth it. But, you know, so is the GAPS diet meant to be a permanent diet, or is it just a healing diet? Is it temporary?
For a proportion of people, it is just a temporary healing diet. Minimum 2 years. You have to stick to it, so do it properly. Yeah. It's temporary. Once you heal your gut, you can then reintroduce things and you'll be able to digest them and you'll be fine. I had just, you know, about a year ago, I had an Italian family, 3 sons, who had celiac disease. They were diagnosed with celiac disease. And for 5 years, they stuck to the GAPS diet, and now they can eat pasta.
Wow.
They were absolutely elated and over the moon. Their celiac disease disappeared. They can eat pasta, ordinary pasta, their spaghetti and whatever else, you know, that they love so much. Not every day, you know, occasionally, but it's still a wonderful gift for them. They can survive that.
Well, that's the point too.
Their gut has healed enough.
And to not return to that point where, like, to the reason why it was damaged in the first place. You don't want to go through the GAPS diet for 4 years or 5 years or 2 years or whatever, however long that is, and then just return to industrialized food and chemicals and, you know, and create those holes again. So yeah, you know, so when I think about
usually doesn't happen.
Yes, the changing a lot diet like that.
Usually that doesn't happen.
Healthy eating.
Because going through the GAPS nutritional protocol, you have to change your whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
And doing the GAPS nutritional protocol, people change. It's not just the diet that changes. Change. Yeah. You become a different person. Your thinking becomes so much clearer. You learn so much. You become extremely well informed about how foods are produced, about industrial agriculture, about how foods are prepared, what our food industry is doing. That is a horrendous whole huge area to learn what's done to food, even after it's produced with all the chemicals. You become very well informed. And with all that information, you simply cannot go back to what you're doing before. It's impossible.
You don't even want to. It's not
impossible.
Like, you know, you start off with that wish. Oh, I wish it was, it's too hard. I wish it was easier, blah, blah, blah. And then you get past that at some point, and then everything's changed. I completely agree. So, Dr.
Talking about agriculture.
Yeah.
Talking about agriculture, I'd like to touch a little bit on vegetarianism.
Okay.
Because we have a mainstream push for vegetarianism now, and it's a popular thing. More and more people are talking about it, and vegetarians believe that they are saving the planet, that they're kind to animals, that they are on the healthiest diet in the world, and all kinds of things. And there are ethical things there as well that they propose, these people. Well, I was getting all these anorexic girls in my clinic. And almost more than 90% of them became anorexic because of misguided vegetarianism. And that spurred an intense interest in this area. I started researching this whole thing. And the first thing I've discovered that there is no reliable science in this area. None. Not one study, you can believe. Particularly China study. That's a big lie, China study. So I've discovered that, you know, all the scientific studies were done by pro-vegetarian lobby. They're skewed. They've been incorrectly designed, incorrectly analyzed, and just the incorrect conclusions were made. So I turned to basic sciences and to clinical experience, because clinical experience is extremely valuable. We see in the clinic what happened, and your patients just don't lie, and their bodies just don't lie, what we observe in the clinic. And based on all that information, I've written a book called Vegetarianism Explained, where I explain how animal foods work in the human body and how plant foods work in the human body. Basically, I've already said it a little bit already, that the only proteins that are appropriate for building the physical structure of the human body are animal proteins. Plant proteins are indigestible for humans, and they're extremely damaging for us, like gluten, for example, saccharine, ovinion, and other proteins and grains. The same goes for fats. The only fats that are appropriate for building the physical structure of the human body are animal fats, from meat, fish, eggs, and dairy.
Not even olive oil?
Plant fats are inappropriate.
No?
Inappropriate. We need a little bit of them, and when we eat lettuce, when we eat nuts, when we eat oily seeds, we get enough. Olive oil is very nice, but I would not heat it.
Yeah, no.
I would buy it cold pressed and use it as a dressing on ready served meals. That's fine. Other plant oils which have been extracted in vacuum conditions, with cold extraction, in the dark, because all plants contain oils which are very fragile.
Yes.
They're easily damaged by light, oxygen, pressure, heat, and other things. That is why they need to be extracted in a very careful manner and then preserved in dark glass in the fridge, and you never ever cook with them. You never heat them. Vegetable oils and cooking oils, which are sold in great big bottles in the supermarket, are a major cause of every degenerative disease in the world, mental and physical. If you've got this oil in your house, throw it away. Don't even give it to people you don't like. It's too cruel, honestly. Don't use them. Cooking should be done on animal fats, on pork fat, lamb fat, beef fat, goose fat, duck fat, butter, ghee. You can use coconut oil for cooking if you like it. Many people just don't like it. They may enjoy it for a few days, and then something happens, they just can't stand it anymore. Yeah. The flavor of it. While bacon fat, everybody loves every day for years. So in the Western culture. So every time you put a joint of meat in the oven, a duck, a good goose, a good joint of pork, or even bacon when you make it in the oven, they will be swimming in a good layer of fat. They'll be sitting in a good layer of fat after they've roasted. You pour that fat through a sieve into glass jars. It will keep in the fridge for at least 6 months. It doesn't spoil. That's the only fat you use for cooking, for frying, roasting, and another cooking purpose, and baking as well. This fat is good for us. It does not cause heart disease. It actually prevents illnesses, and it heals the human body. So coming to the vegetarianism, only animal foods are capable of building and sustaining and feeding the human body, our physical structure. Remember, all the cells in the human body die all the time and get replaced by newly born cells. In order to give birth to all those baby cells, building materials are required. Only animal foods can provide those building materials in the right biochemical shape and structure to build your big, heavy brain, which renews itself all the time, by the way, your big heart, your big lungs, your big liver, your huge digestive system, your huge muscle system, your bones, everything. Every 3 months, we have a new liver.
Yes.
All your liver cells died and got replaced by newly born. You have to give building materials to your liver to sustain that process. Plants are incapable of providing us with building materials because the protein in plants is inappropriate for human physiology. Certain amino acids are missing, other amino acids are in excess, and they're indigestible. The human digestive system cannot break them down to really feed your body. The same with fats. The only suitable fats come from the animal foods. So what are the plants for? Plants cannot feed and build the human body, but they provide us with a plethora of wonderful cleansing substances. Phytonutrients, oxalates, salicylates, vitamins, minerals, and other things, which keep our bodies clean on the inside. That is why we eat animal foods and plants in combination, because it's important for us to be well fed, well nourished, and build a good solid physical structure for ourselves, and to be clean on the inside. So veganism is not a diet. It is a form of fasting. When you're eating all those plants and you're completely excluding animal foods, you are not feeding your body to any degree. You are cleansing. Cleansing, cleansing, and cleansing, and cleansing. There are many toxic, overweight people in our world who could do with a good cleanse.
Yes.
Couple of months of veganism will not do them any harm. But at a certain point, when your body has finished cleansing, it will give you a signal. I finished cleansing, I'm hungry now. Feed me, please.
Right.
The way it will give you this signal, it will give you desire for a piece of meat, for a pot of cream, for a piece of cheese, for eggs, for an omelette, or something else like that. You need to listen to that. But many vegans do veganism for ethical reasons, political reasons, religious reasons, all kinds of reasons. So they don't listen to their body. They override that signal. They force their body to continue cleansing when the body is actually hungry. And that is the point when the body starts breaking down its own muscle mass to feed more important organs, such as your brain, your heart, your liver. So you start losing muscle and you start dissolving your physical structure, basically. So vegans can really damage themselves if they stay long-term on their vegan protocol. What I've also learned by working with many vegans and vegetarians and meeting many recovering vegans in the world, that vast majority of vegans cheat. And it is quite often unconscious. It's a split personality. I met this lovely young man from Edinburgh who came here, and he told me that this story, that he was a vegan for 4 months for political reasons, and he was walking along the street in Edinburgh spreading leaflets about veganism, and a smell of roasting chicken wafted out of a shop. And he said, in some sort of trance, I walked into the shop, I bought a whole roasted chicken, I came outside, I sat on the pavement, and I ate the whole thing.
Oh my.
And then he said, I came out of that trance and I was so ashamed of myself. This happens to all vegans. This happens regularly to vegans. They are terribly ashamed of this period. That's what your body will do to you when it's really starving, when it really needs proper building sustenance, proper food. It will switch off your conscious mind. You will eat in a trance. You will go and eat a piece of meat in a trance of some sort. And then you'll come out of it and you'll be very, very ashamed of yourself. Vegans usually do not tell anyone about these episodes. They're ashamed. So they will go around telling everybody this fairy tale that, oh, I've been a vegan 20 years, I'm fine. No, you're not. You've been cheating. Vast majority of them do. And quite often this cheating is unconscious. There's apparently a book written now by a vegan who describes exactly that, by a recovering vegan. But don't believe vegans who tell you that they've been vegans for many years and they're perfectly fine. Human body cannot live on plants. It cannot survive on plants longer than a few months. It simply cannot. It needs animal foods. So people who sustain themselves on these regimens, they may look terrible. They usually have severe anemia, severe deficiencies in proteins, B12 and other nutrients, but they're still alive, these people, because they cheat. Either consciously or unconsciously, in a state of this kind of trance when they eat. So veganism is not a diet, it is a form of fasting. It is possible to be a healthy vegetarian as long as you continue eating some animal foods. For example, eggs and milk, full-fat dairy products, and fish occasionally maybe, or even occasionally meat. And this kind of vegetarian cultures exist in India. The vegetarians in India, not out of choice, the vegetarians out of poverty, because there are so many people in India. If they start eating their animals, they will probably eat them all in 2 weeks. There'll be nothing left. No dogs, no cats, no rats, nothing. So there are many cultures in India which live far away from the sea or the river or the lake, because people who live along waterways in India, they eat fish for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is their staple. And that is the most valuable piece on their plate, fish and mollusks and shellfish. So where people who live far away from the waterways, they may be vegetarian, but they have chickens and they eat lots of eggs, and they all have dairy products. They love ghee, they love cheese, they love cream, they love milk. Why do you think a cow is a sacred animal in India? You cannot harm a cow. Because through thousands of years, Indians learned that without the cow, they will simply perish. They will not survive, because they gives them she gives them a valuable feeding, building food that sustains the physical structure of their bodies. So it's essential for them. The Western style evangelical vegetarianism came to India in the 1930s and 20s with the books of Nathan Pritihin, who was a great advocate for veganism. And there are some groups now who follow that. But again, just like Western vegans, they cheat. They do not follow it 100%. And Nathan Pritihin himself died from leukemia because of his veganism. Vegans usually finish up badly. They either develop neurological disorder or psychiatric disorder. Parkinsonism is very common, multiple sclerosis common amongst them. Autoimmune illnesses and mental illness are very common because their bodies are starving. So please read that book. If you want to understand the whole subject, I cover the agriculture, the agricultural aspect of it, where the food comes from, every statement that vegans and vegetarians make. So prudishly, that they're saving the planet, that is a false statement. They're doing just the opposite. They're destroying the planet through their choice. That their diet is the healthiest thing in the world, just the opposite. It's not healthy at all. And the vegans, I have seen so many sick vegans. You know, I wish I've started counting them, but I haven't. And that they're kind to animals, just the opposite. Just the opposite. Veganism encourages industrial animal agriculture, which is terrible and cruel and should be banned. Animals should be treated with love and kindness, and they should be growing on pasture in happy, natural environments. And there are plenty of farms like that in every Western country, if you look for these farms. You don't have to buy your meat in the supermarket, which comes from the industrial, cruel, terrible, inhumane agriculture. So if you want to understand the full subject of vegetarians, please read that book.
Okay, for sure. Okay, and you sound like a woman on a mission. I mean, obviously, all of the interviews I've listened to that you've given and talks, and I mean, just like, there's just been hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And every time I come out of them, I'm like, whoa, I'm always just blown away. But so I think that just to end this interview, would you give us a little bit of a, like, quickly, why did you get so passionate about this? Why did you start investigating this way to eat, or how to, you know, reverse things like, you know, like gaps, like gut and psychology syndrome? Like, what got you doing that? And then, yeah, like, I guess I think, and as far as I remember about your story, is that it was that mama warrior in you. So would you tell us a little bit about that before we sign off today?
I'm a mother. I'm just like you. I'm a mother, and mothers are my heroes. It's mothers in this world that are changing the world. Mothers, and of course fathers as well, who stand by the mothers. Unfortunately, you know, in many families with autistic children, divorces follow because the fathers just can't cope with the situation. Many situations like that. But in the majority of cases, the father and the mother stand side by side, and they work on their child together. I believe that children come to us as teachers. We think we teach our children. We teach them mundane things. How to walk, how to eat, how to dress, how to drive a car in this world. While they teach us the most profound, universal truths. On a spiritual level, they make us grow spiritually. They make us better people, the children. And I've got that kind of teacher in my family. My first child, who was autistic at the age of 3. He was extremely severe. He could not talk. He could not understand language. He was the child who would take the hand of any stranger on the street and try to walk away. He was extremely severe. Now he's a young man who has fully recovered, leading a normal life and leading a full life. And he's still my teacher.
Yes.
Because on any spiritual question, any philosophical question that I'm not quite sure about, I ask him. He just provides the answer just like that, off the cuff. Because children are spiritually more evolved maybe than we are, and they come to teach us. So he was my teacher. It's thanks to him that I have developed the GAPS nutritional protocol, because I had to save him. At the age of 3, when he was diagnosed, I realized that my own profession had absolutely nothing to offer my precious child. And I had to search, I had to look, and thankfully I was able to find the information, the right information to implement in time, and we saved him. And as I was in contact with many other children, other families with autistic children, I started helping them as well. And that's how my clinic evolved. And that's how the whole thing developed. And then I've written the book. Once I've accumulated the experience with thousands of children in my clinic, I've written the book, and that's how the whole thing took off. I never expected it to be such a global phenomenon. Now the book has been translated into 19 languages. I need to update my my CV, and it's GAPS nutritional protocol is followed in 19 countries now around the world. And I have been training health practitioners all over the world. We have more than 3,000 practitioners all over the world now who are GAPS certified practitioners. So if you need that specialized help, you can go online and just key in a GAPS practitioner, and you will find lists of them, and you will find a local practitioner local to you. And there are then many practitioners who work by Skype, by phone, so it doesn't have to be local necessarily. These people are trained how to take you through the GAPS nutritional protocol, how to deal with individual problems, and they will answer your questions. So we've been busy doing that. And through this experience, I have learned that there are no hopeless situations in life. That if your medical doctor doesn't have an answer for you, it doesn't mean that the answer doesn't exist elsewhere. It's just that your doctor doesn't have the answer, because doctors don't know everything. How can they possibly do? How can they possibly know everything? We have internet, which is wonderful. Just go and search, speak to other people, never lose hope. There are no hopeless situations in the world. I have so many children with genetic disorders, so-called genetic disorders, including Down syndrome and Rett syndrome and other syndromes, where they get better.
Yes.
Of course, the child will not recover from Down syndrome. Of course, all the facial features and other things will not disappear. But the child becomes physically well and healthy, far more able to learn, far more able to function mentally, and they start functioning close to normal. They go to normal schools. They become a joy for their families, for their parents, rather than a constant worry and a constant drain that you have to care for. So things can improve, and you never know to what degree. Sky's the limit, honestly. Don't worry if your child has been diagnosed with a so-called genetic condition, because genetics are a big hoax in this world. Majority of the funds in the medical research have been put into genetics, and it's been a huge disappointment, and every year it is a huge disappointment, because our genes are not our destiny. Genetics are only the only condition what proteins are produced in your body. The real decisive factor are epigenetics. There's a new science of epigenetics. What it says basically that we've been all born with a huge choice of genes. We all have a choice in our bodies to develop cancer, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, schizophrenia, depression, whatever, anything, any kind of problem. But it's the environment inside us and outside us that we create that chooses which genes are going to be expressed and become active, and which genes will sleep forever, never wake up. So it is up to you, because it's a good news, isn't it? Because there's nothing we can do about our genetics, but we can change the environment inside us and outside us. We can choose our environment. And by manipulating the environment around us, we're choosing our genetics. And you can choose by following the GAPS nutritional protocol, by supporting good farmers around your city, by buying the real proper natural foods, by changing your attitude to the whole planet, to the whole life on our planet, by changing your thoughts from negative to positive, by changing your attitudes to life. You are choosing the genes which are programmed for health, for vitality, for happiness, for positivity. You are manipulating your genetics. So if your child was diagnosed with some genetic condition, it's only because the doctors haven't got any other answer. So they've caught up on some gene and they say, oh, it's genetic. Must be, because we don't know any other explanation for this problem. Go follow the GAPS nutritional protocol. Chances are those genes will shut down and stop functioning. And other genes will wake up and start working, and your child will change, and your child will start recovering. And because there is no precedent of that yet, and because nobody's researched that yet, you will not receive that answer from anybody. You just have to try. You just have to do it yourself. So there are no hopeless situations. There is always hope. as long as you choose life and choose health and choose happiness. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Oh, what better word? There are no better words to end this interview with than those. So thank you so much, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, for being part of the Children's and Teen Health Summit.
It's a pleasure.
For the Children's Health Summit 4, it was an honor and a privilege to have you speak, and you have yourself a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and be sure to listen to more interviews from this timely and groundbreaking series. If you would like more information, guidance, and support through your family's health journey, and or want to join our growing community of professionally trained family health coaches, please visit us at healthyfamilyformula.com. Together, we can turn the tide for the future health of our children. May you and your families be well.